Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarinam Tribhuvane Manyo Saranya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. The translation: I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Then Srila Rupa Goswami pranams. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada, who was established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet. Here we have, in Mauritius right now, there's what is called an anticyclone weather. It is not really a cyclone, but it's very, very windy. I'm not sure if you can hear that background sound.
No, Maharaj, we don't hear anything. We just hear your voice.
Because it just comes also through the cracks of the window. I mean, slightly some air comes in. But if it's clear, that's good. All right, thank you very much. Can say together with me, everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing with the Nectar of Instruction, Sri Upadeshamrita by Srila Rupa Goswami, translated as Nectar of Instruction by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And we are beginning with text 2 for this particular session. So everyone can get to the verse in your books, and I will read the verse and as well as the translation and some part of the purport thereafter. Atyahara prayaschascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha sadbid bhaktid vinasyati. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha Jana sangascha lolyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinasyati atyahara prayasascha rajalpo niyamagraha Jana sangascha lolyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashyati. So this particular verse helps us understand how to prevent ourselves from not falling down from the practices of Krishna consciousness. In other words, if one does these things, one is actually in a kind of fallen state, but better to avoid these things. So in the translation, Srila Prabhupada says, one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. Eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. Or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements. Just give me a moment, I'm going to switch the light on because it gets a little dark soon. And in the purport, in the very first line, Srila Prabhupada says, human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. So I'm going to get to paragraph 7 where Prabhupada mentions this again about plain living and high thinking. And in paragraph 7, you could say, all right, I'm going to read the entire paragraph and then we'll take it from there. Collecting and eating more than necessary also causes prayasa, or unnecessary endeavor. By God's arrangement, anyone in any part of the world can live very peacefully if he has some land and a milk cow. There is no need for man to move from one place to another to earn a livelihood. One can produce food grains locally and get milk from cows. That can solve all economic problems. Fortunately, man has been given higher intelligence for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness or the understanding of God, one's relationship with Him, and the ultimate goal of life, love of God. Unfortunately, so-called civilized man, not caring for God realization, utilizes his tongue to get more than necessary and simply eat to satisfy the tongue. By God's arrangement, there is sufficient scope for the production of milk and grains for human beings all over the world. But instead of using their higher intelligence to cultivate God consciousness, so-called intelligent men misuse their intelligence to produce many unnecessary and unwanted things. Thus, factories, slaughterhouses, brothels, and liquor shops are opened. If people are advised not to collect too many goods, eat too much, or work unnecessarily to possess artificial amenities, They think that they are being advised to return to a primitive way of life. Generally, people do not like to accept plain living and high thinking. That is their unfortunate position. And then Srila Prabhupada speaks further about this plain living and high thinking in paragraph 22. It's a lengthy purport, but if you numbered your paragraphs, you'll come to paragraph 22. I'm beginning to read. Krishna conscious devotees know very well that this material world is designed by the complete arrangement of the Lord to fulfill all the necessities of life for all living beings, without their having to encroach upon the life and or rights of one another. This complete arrangement affords the proper quota of wealth for everyone according to his real needs, and thus everyone may live peacefully according to the principle of plain living and high thinking. Very beautifully explained by Srila Prabhupada here. I just expanded on that very first line from the purport, the very first sentence actually, in the purport in paragraph 1. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing that human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. So if you switch those words around, instead of plain living, you just say plainly thinking, and instead of high thinking, you say high living. So everyone's the other way around, most people in this world. Instead of plain living and high thinking, they're plainly thinking and high living, if it's called high living. Now, Srila Prabhupada also used to say that, if we simply have a land and cows, and at the same time with Krishna and Balaram. So Krishna is a cowherd boy, Gopa. That means land for agriculture. At least Krishna is a cowherd boy, Gopa. That means cows in the sense of, milk products. And everything is sort of localized. You don't even have to have a car. Everything is very much localized for plain living and high thinking. So one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, if Krishna is a Gopa or a cowherd boy, then who is Balaram? Although Balaram is also a Gopa and a cowherd boy, but who is Balaram? In the sense of plain living and high thinking. So Srila Prabhupada simply said, Balaram, plow boy. Plow means haladar. Hala, plowing, haladar, plow boy. So Krishna is a cowherd boy and Balaram is a plow boy. So therefore the land means agriculture, Balaram, and and the cows giving, nice, milk products in terms of Krishna as the Gopa, as the cowherd boy. So just having Krishna and Balaram and the land and the cows in our lives is actually plain living and high thinking. It defeats all this recession and economy, which is so artificial in the world. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada said that the material world is actually designed that one has to work. It's designed that one has to work. But at the same time, the material world is designed as Dukkalayam Ashashvatam, a place that is certified by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita to be full of dukkha, full of miseries, full of unhappiness, full of pain. See? And Ashashvatam means why we want to make a permanent situation in a temporary certified world. That means everything is quite temporary, Ashashvatam, full of misery and temporary. But at the same time, it is designed that we're meant to work, but not meant to overwork. That is plain living and high thinking. Now, some simple examples that we can break it down. We can break these simple examples down in relation to our practical lives, especially in our homes. Now, if you really look around in your home, you will find that you may have items, because, eating more than necessary and collecting more funds than required. In that sense, atyahara. But you will find in your home that, and then prayasa, like so much over endeavor for these things. But you'll find in your home that there are items maybe like ornaments and even clothing and even shoes, so many things in one's own home itself that you haven't really have any use for it. It is just like a decorative situation in the home. And it's quite temporary, but you don't really have any use for it. See? So in part, you could say, we could understand that that's like, not plain living and high thinking. In part, that is like that, not plain living and high thinking. And not plain living and high thinking is also wasting. Wasting means that, we cook more than we require, and then we just throw it away. And even when we put things, even prasadam for that matter, on our plates, we are like over endeavoring to put more on the plate, but actually we can't honor all the prasad. So you just like sometimes just throw it away. See? And you will find even people when they go to restaurants, they may take more than they need, but they don't eat all that food stuff. So how is this? Is because this kind of that type of lolium of greed is there, that just like, life is so complicated that you take more than you need, even for eating, and so many people are starving out there. So many people are starving. So therefore, life is not really plain living and high thinking, but we get caught up in it. So we should be cautious for that. Now, in paragraph 1, Srila Prabhupada discusses Krishna's 3 primary energies, of how these energies kind of run amok, especially Tatastha Shakti. See? And there are these 3 primary energies basically in paragraph 1, which you can refer to later, is Antaranga Shakti, which is the internal energy. That's how Prabhupada begins in the purport, after plain living and high thinking. And then there's Tatastha Shakti, which is the marginal energy. And there's the Bahiranga Shakti, which is the external energy. It's in paragraph 1 itself. But we'll place one slide now, which is slide number 19. You can put it on. About human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. And here Prabhupada says human life is actually meant for God realization, and the human being is given high intelligence for this purpose. Those who believe that this high intelligence is meant to attain a higher state should follow the instructions of the Vedic literatures. And so by doing that, we come to the point of plain living and high thinking. Sometimes we may not know that we are not living in a plain way, and high thinking means spiritually, for God realization. So let's get to the next slide, which is slide number 20. You can place it on? Yes. So here it is wonderfully described about the Tatastha Shakti, which is the marginal potency. And Prabhupada gives a very beautiful analogy, which is his very own, actually, very own analogy. And I'm just about to read it. Text 2, Tatastha Shakti. We are spirit soul. We are put into marginal because just like the margin is explained, Tatastha. That is, we have translated into marginal. Just like we go to the Pacific beach, someday we find the water is covering the beach, and someday we see it is open. There is no water. So that is called marginal. Marginal. Sometimes it is covered by water, and sometimes there is no water. Similarly, we being marginal potency, we're sometimes influenced by this material nature, which is Bahiranga Shakti, not always. Because at the present moment, for sometimes we are under the material nature. Now, if we try, then we can get out of this covering of material nature and come to the spiritual nature. That is the Krishna consciousness movement. Krishna consciousness movement means don't remain in the marginal position. Come in the land so there will be no disturbance by the water. This is the position. If you remain on the marginal position, then sometimes you'll be covered by the water and sometimes it will be dry. But if you little come forward this side, land side, the ocean has no power to touch you. So put me back on the screen. So this analogy Srila Prabhupada gives about the beach. So the beach is sometimes covered by water because of the high tide. And then the beach is exposed to land when it's low tide. So that portion is like neither land nor water. It's in between. So that is called Tatastha Shakti. See? So now, sometimes we get another example that belongs in the same category. At least not sometimes, but like the doorway. So the doorway is not inside and it's not outside. It has its own sphere of existence. So either you go inside, which is Antaranga Shakti, the spiritual potency, or you remain outside, like in the ocean of material existence. But nobody lives on the doorway. Either you are entering the home or you're outside the home. So within the home is Krishna consciousness, and outside the home is the material world. So that's another example. And I give a third example of Tatastha Shakti. It's like the fence. On this side is one property, then on the other side is another property. But nobody lives on the fence. The fence is that sphere, or you could say space, that does not belong to one side or the other side. It divides which belongs to you and which belongs to your neighbor. Just like the doorway has its own existence to tell you which is outside and which sphere is inside. But why is the living entity called Tatastha Shakti? That's only a term that is used for the living entity in the conditioned state of material existence. There's no Tatastha Shakti within Krishna consciousness or Goloka Vrindavan for that matter. So that Tatastha Shakti for the living entity is a kind of, you could say, insecurity. Insecurity. And I'll give various examples of this insecurity that is actually the Tatastha Shakti that affects the living entity. So one simple example can be given. Just like sometimes, one may go shopping to buy some new garments. See? Or even sometimes one may go shopping to buy some garments for a wedding. See? Clothes. Yeah. But one knows that, one has choices. In other words, the shop owner will tell you this good, not good, but you have your own choice of what you want to buy. So in the beginning stages, because it is not plain living and high thinking, one is attracted by fashion, one is attracted by looks of the cloth and the texture of the cloth. So that means there's no plain living and high thinking because of the Tatastha Shakti. And then one will choose one garment, say within the next 30 minutes. See? And one will even outfit it in the change room and talk about it, this, that. Then 3 hours have gone past, still you haven't made a decision of which cloth to buy, of which garment to buy, whether it's a dress or a sari or whatever, or a dhoti, kota, or a pants or a shirt, and it doesn't know what to do. So that is called statashta. That means one is doubtful. Am I making the right decision here? One is very, very doubtful. See? So therefore, plain living is very simple. Like, if you live in the ashram, in the temple, you just wear the same clothes with the same color, like for a brahmachari or a sannyasi. It's become simple. Even for grihasthas, you can become very simple also. Plain dhoti, kota, white cloth. And for Matajis, they can wear some saris that has there and so forth. But we don't do that. We don't do that. It becomes like a whole meditation. It becomes like, I'm not happy with this color, that color, the texture, the material. It takes so long to just decide to buy one new garment. That is called tatastha. And then what happens? When you buy the garment and then you come back home, then you think, then, your daughter will tell you, or your mother will tell you, or even your husband or father will tell you, why you bought that? You're wearing it, but you don't look so nice in that. Those colors. Then you think, oh my God, I went and spent 4 hours for this garment, and what's happening now at home? Or the next door neighbor lady is your friend, and she'll come and tell some comment. Then you have a 14-day return policy and you go back. Tatastha. Doubtful. Indecisive. That is material life. Material life. That's one example. So let me give you another example. That after 25 years of marriage, the man feels, I married the wrong person as a wife. I should have married the other one. Tatastha. Still doubtful. Irresponsible thoughts. No plain living and high thinking. No culture. I'll give you another example. See, he's in the profession of being, you could say, a doctor. And he's been practicing medicine and also making money and so forth, but he's not happy and he's not satisfied and so forth. He's a doctor for 20 years and finally realized, it was not so challenging for me. I should have been a lawyer because I'm more good at speaking and words and so forth. Should be a lawyer. He has doubts after 20 years of his profession. That is material life. Tatastha, life full of doubts, uncertainty, insecurity. Unless you come the other side, Prabhupada says, land side to Krishna consciousness, then life becomes plain and simple, plain living and internal high thinking in Krishna consciousness. Internal high thinking in Krishna consciousness. So that's practically the first paragraph in how we can solve our problems with these various points of atyahara, praya shastra, prajalpa niyamagra, janasangas, janasangas chalolyam cha, sadbhit bhakti vinashyati, it just destroys everything. So this is just to introduce, as Srila Prabhupada is introducing it in paragraph number 1. Okay. I'm going to just continue a little bit more and then I'll take some questions before we get to each point of these 6 items, within text number 2. You can go to the slide 21. And I'm just like sort of paraphrasing this. So this is in text number 2, and you'll find it in paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. Prabhupada nicely covers it in paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. But I have summarized it for you on the slide. And it's also in your slide personal notes that you may have received. I have summarized it for you. So we have a comparison. If you're under the internal potency, which is Yogamaya, on your left side of the screen, then you're considered a Mahatma and you're broad-minded. In other words, you extend your heart to others. But if you're not living plain living and high thinking, then you are a Duratma. You're cripple-minded. And therefore, you're under the external potency of Mahamaya. So with the Mahatma, broad-minded, as compared to the Duramatma, cripple-minded, they are secure within their natural state of Krishna consciousness, within the Antaranga Shakti or Yogamaya, internal potency. Whereas the Duratma on the right side in blue, one is like within the Tatastha Shakti, within the material nature. One is living a life of havoc in the external potency of Bahiranga Shakti. So the activities of the Mahatma is described in the next 2 texts, 3 and 4, which we'll cover in the forthcoming days. But the Duratma, his activities are subjected to miseries. And we know what the threefold miseries are: Adi Atmik, Adi Devik, and Adi Bhautik. The threefold miseries, which is under Mahamaya. So we see that the living entities under Mahamaya or Duratma, cripple-minded, in that sense, on the right side. So you can put me back onto the screen now. That just was the summary of practically in paragraph 2, 3, and 4. See? So the living entities in the material world are under the control of basically Mahamaya, whose business is to subject them. Mahamaya is through the 3 modes of material nature. One is subjected to the threefold miseries. Adidevik klesha, that means we are suffering because of droughts, earthquakes, storms, too hot, too cold, which is actually Adi Devika, caused by the demigods. Then there's Adi Bhautika klesha, which means suffering caused by other living entities like, insects, enemies, somebody will shoot you with a gun, like that, So that's there. Then there's adi atmika klesha, or miseries caused by one's own body and mind, such as, some mental illness, some physical diseases, and so forth, like that. So Mahamaya is actually goddess Durga, and she is the mother of the living entities in the material world. And she's like the warden of the prison house of the material world. Durga means prison house. So Durga is the superintendent of this material world. And therefore, you'll see pictures of Durga sitting on a tiger and holding a trident, trishul, three-pronged, weapon, trident, and in her hand. So that trident represents this threefold miseries, Adi Devika, Adi Atmika, and Adi Bodhika kleshas, which includes birth, disease, old age, and death. So that's where that stands in terms of Mahatma and Duratma. So now I can take some questions, which I've already covered in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4 for you from the booklet. If you have any questions, you can kindly raise your hand so that Krishna Prema Pradayaka Prabhu can bring you onto the screen.
Kevala Bhakti Prabhu has a question.
Okay, come onto the screen, Kevala Bhakti Prabhu. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. My humble obeisances, glories to Prabhupada.
Except mine, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
So, Maharaj, I really appreciated the class so far today. Thank you very much. I had actually two quick questions. The first question was regarding this idea of living simple and high thinking. Sometimes we have devotees who have worked hard and they've accumulated a significant amount of wealth. I just wanted to ask your comment on, I guess, really the struggle of how to live simply when there's this existing wealth that's there for devotees.
I am trying to understand your question. If you can just, I'm going to ask you a further question to clarify your question to me further.
Sure.
You mean that devotees who have a significant amount of wealth, what's that wealth you're talking about?
Oh, I should be clear. Yeah. Yes, Maharaj. So I mean like financial wealth. If they're doing well, they drive. We see sometimes devotees who drive very expensive cars. They live in very palatial houses, and it seems like they're trying to direct as much as they can towards Krishna consciousness. But there might be some inclination towards material excess as well.
Well, different persons may live differently according to the nature of how they want to live. You can put me back onto the screen. I mentioned that different persons, according to their guna and karma, they may live differently. However, as we progress in Krishna consciousness, we may come to the point of plain living and high thinking. So therefore, if one is categorized according to one's wealth, in terms of artificial economy, that means I have so much numbers of so many dollars or rupees and or ringgits in Malaysia in the bank. It's quite artificial. It's very artificial. Srila Prabhupada says, real money is actually land bank and cows. If you have land, that value of the land does not change in terms of the artificial economy. And if you have cows, that does not change. So therefore, instead of going to like some artificially buying products from like the shop or supermarkets or different places, one can just get whatever one needs to eat from one's own land, including milk products from cows. That's called plain living and high thinking. Actually, it's the wealth. It's the real wealth of this world. And we can identify with this in this current situation of this COVID-19 right now. We can easily identify with it because the world is in a very heavy, deep recession because of the artificial economy. Okay? And that's also now good for even ourselves, for whatever it's worth, as ISKCON leaders, spiritual leaders, and management leaders, to more look into carefully right now for all over the world. Like, what will happen if you live in a high-rise building, overseeing, Lake Ontario? It's on the like the 30th floor of a high-rise building, and suddenly there's no electricity around. You want to walk up 30 floors every day? It's not going to work. See, and you won't be able to drive your car around because of this, energy that runs the cars and so forth. So basically, it's actually attracting unnecessary anxiety, stress, and depression. It's a very simple therapy for anxiety, stress, and depression within this material world. Is that one can simply go and stroke a cow. If you just play with the cow and stroke the cow gently, lovingly, affectionately, you will not know that your depression and stress has left you practically instantly. Practically instantly. I've had this experience. Everyone who lives with nature has this experience. As soon as you leave that cow and its affectionate nature, and you go back to that, driving those cars and living in some high-rise apartments or buildings and so forth, then you start hearing those sounds again. The movement of cars, swish, swish, Papa would say swish, 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 like that, and living in a high-rise building, with your neighbors and so forth like that, you can hear all those sounds. Practically, you cannot even hear a bird chirping. And nowadays, people do not even hear the cars and other sounds, even materialistic, they're only hearing the cell phone. And then the stress and the depression comes in. Then you realize, oh, when I was with the cow, I never felt that. I never felt that. So just living with Mother Nature in terms of the cows and the agriculture and so forth for anyone, whether it's in Mathura, Dwarka that was there, or whether it's in Vrindavan that was there, whether it's, whatever place there was trees, beautiful lakes, swans, and so forth. So that's actually life. That's the wealth. Srila Prabhupada emphasized over and over again, our wealth is the cows and the land. That means Krishna and Balaram, together with the cows and the land, the cowherd boy and the plow boy. Try it. Srila Prabhupada also used to mention that people are so fed up with life in the city that they want to go to another home in the countryside. But Srila Prabhupada said that the conditioning and attachment goes with them. And while in the countryside, they were making plans of what to do from the office again. They're not taking advantage of hearing the birds chirping, the frogs croaking, the beautiful sunset and the beautiful sunrise, nature itself. So therefore, it is very, very important that we come back to plain living and high thinking. And Srila Prabhupada emphasized in many, many letters and many, many places that every temple in the city must be connected to a farm community. And in times of actually great need and distress in the city, at least we have the shelter of a farm community and take shelter and go back. Every temple. So if you have wealth in the bank, it's a good time to buy land also. Everything is down on real estate. Everything is down. So go and buy that land. Not as an ISKCON entity, not necessarily as an ISKCON entity. You do it yourself. You own some land out there and work with the land and learn how to take care of, even one cow with its calf. Many, one cow with its calf. And you'll find that the children, as they grow up, if you give them a choice, they will love to just be on the farm with the cows. They have loved to be, just growing the children up like that. They always want to go, no, I want to be there. I just want to be there. So also, at least we may not have that advantage in our adult years now, at least for our children and grandchildren. We could give them that life which is free from depression, stress, anxiety, whatever, which comes with so-called modern material advancement. Is that all right, Kevala Bhakti? Kevala Bhakti Prabhu, is that okay?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, Mars, that was wonderful. Thank you. It was beautiful.
You had another question, you said?
Yeah, I was just wondering. I really loved the analogies you gave about how this indecisiveness, this doubt, is a sign of this Tatashta Shakti. Sometimes in our devotional practice, we can also have indecisiveness, and it feels like it blurs the line, because will this opportunity, this job opportunity I have, how will it affect my service? Or even just doubts about our services or some opportunity in Krishna consciousness. Can you just clarify how what category those fit into and how it relates?
See, Tatastha Shakti in the material world is misuse of one's independence. From a philosophical point of view, it's misusing one's independence. Tatastha Shakti. But therefore, when you misuse one's independence, then that is really not independence. It just governs, you're governed by the modes of material nature, which is Tatastha Shakti. So therefore, one will always be living a life of doubts. One will always be living in indecisiveness, which is Tatastha Shakti. But when we come to Krishna consciousness, it's our proper use of our independence. One is free of the proper use of. And within independence, there's a variegatedness of flavors in practical devotional service. For example, if one is cooking for Krishna today, so one is deciding, what should I cook for Krishna? That is not Tatastha Shakti. That is on the absolute platform, because everything is in relationship to Krishna. And it is on the absolute platform because it is not an indecision. It is not like something that one is doubtful about. It's a practical, fact that, one is by nature naturally Krishna conscious. See? So if one goes into the kitchen to do some cooking for Radha and Krishna and to offer that, but one will plan that even the day before, that tomorrow, for the Rajbhog offering, I will do this and do that, and one will plan it even the day before. So this planning is there, that Krishna is actually accepting more of our devotion than the actually ingredients that we decide on of what to cook for. So the imbued, you could say, the energy into our consciousness is like, the main thing is devotion. And devotion, premanjana, churiti bhakti vilochanena, santa sadeva, hridayeshu vilokayanti, yam shama sundaram achincha guna swarupam, govindamadi purusham, tamaham bhajami. So that prema anjana, when our consciousness is imbued with devotion, then the decisiveness of what we do for Krishna is there, but at the same time, the devotional aspect is the underlying foundation of that. So we may decide for Krishna to use this particular outfit today, even for our home deities. Or we may decide that. And in the morning, when you take out that outfit to dress your deities, so then the husband will tell the wife, today I had a kind of, last night I had a nice dream that Krishna likes blue today. So why don't you just change those outfits? So you may have decided something, but somebody else's consciousness is governing your devotion also. So that is not Tatastha. That is on the absolute platform. Everything in relation to Krishna. Is that all right, Kevala Bhakti Prabhu?
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
You're welcome. Other questions from other devotees before I move on?
That's all for now, Maharaj.
Okay. So now you can place slide 22, which is called Atyahara. So we are moving into each item, or the 6 items here. And the first one is called Atyahara. So I have summarized it for you by taking salient points from the paragraphs in the purport themselves. So Srila Prabhupada in the translation says, Atyahara means, number 1 there on the screen, eating more than necessary. And number 2, as part of Atyahara in the translation, it says collecting more funds than required. And then in paragraph 14, Srila Prabhupada says, too much endeavor to acquire knowledge, like mental speculators or dry philosophers. That is also Atyahara. That means, one is just reading too many books for no reason and not practicality. One becomes like a Gyani or a Shastriji or a Panditji. So that is also Atyahara. And I'm continuing with number 3 on the screen. The work of karmis who write volumes of books on economic development. That is also Atyahara. And right now in this pandemic, we are affected by that economic development because we are following too much the non-devotees who are writing volumes of books on economic development, which is also partly an answer to Kevala Bhakti's question for today. And that economic development books is either in the shape of scientific knowledge or monetary gain, which is artificial economy. So Prabhupada mentions that in paragraph 14. It's quite amazing that it applies currently to this COVID-19 situation also. Then number 4 in Atyahara says that Bhukti Kamis, they are interested in material happiness. That means they over-accumulate too many things just to become materially happy, which is actually bringing more distress, and it's temporary. And Mukti Kamis, they desire liberation by merging into the existence of the formless Brahman, which indicates here that they want to become God. That's an amazing material desire. It's the last material desire, or to merge with the Supreme. And then in part of number 4, the Siddhi Kamis. They desire the perfection of mystic yoga practice, are also classified as Atyaharis. In other words, they want to become powerful in this material world. To ordinarily, bewilder regular people with some like mystic power. Mystic power. So that is also Atyahari, over-accumulation, for no reason at all. And number 5, which is also currently affecting us. Modern capitalists accumulate more wealth than necessary. And then capitalism and material communism is there to advance the material position. Material communism is also another form of capitalism, because when they come into power, the communists, they also hoard for themselves, the leaders especially. So here, this is the basic, you could say, excerpts from the paragraphs, 14, paragraph 17, paragraph 19, and so forth, just to paraphrase for you what is actually Atyahara from the purport themselves, just to make it easier in that way. Otherwise, the purport is quite lengthy to read. So we take the gist of it and put it onto the screen for now. You can put me back on the screen. Now, the simple word for Atyahara that can be told is called accumulating. Accumulating. In other words, one is living in fear. When one accumulates, one is keeping something that one unnecessarily does not need for the future. If it's necessary to keep something, that's fine. So therefore, one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs, which is also in paragraph 5 in this purport. And this accumulating is unknown in the lower species of life. Prabhupada gives such a nice example in paragraph 6 in the purport, that if a bag of rice is placed in a public place, now the birds will immediately come and eat a few grains and they'll go away. But a human being, however, he will take away the whole bag. And he will eat all his stomach and whole, and then he will try to keep the rest in some storage unnecessarily. So just imagine that these birds, they do not even know who Krishna is. But the birds have faith that my food will still be there, I don't have to store. They have that, even if they don't have faith in Krishna. So Krishna, in that sense, is a proof that he provides for everybody. He provides for everybody. But provides what? Provides our basic needs. Basic needs. So this reminds us of something I heard from, His Holiness Brhat Swami, that, once in London, Srila Prabhupada was offered a very expensive, luxurious Kashmir sweater. Very expensive, luxurious Kashmir sweater. So when Srila Prabhupada, immediately when he was offered it, he wore it. He wore it. So after some time, when another devotee offered Srila Prabhupada with love, with affection, he offered Srila Prabhupada a very inexpensive sweater. In other words, a token of the price of a luxurious Kashmir sweater. And Srila Prabhupada immediately took out that Kashmir sweater and he gave it to the devotee as Mahaprasad, and took away that inexpensive sweater. Immediately. Like that. So, it's not something that one can really imitate artificially, but, it makes a point. How many sweaters do we need? We may need a few, one for like spring and one for winter or something, or autumn and winter, and that's there. Also, a beautiful, you could say, example of Srila Sanatana Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. You can look it up on your own. That Srila Sanatana Goswami, he had one expensive blanket, and he traded it with somebody else, on the way to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for a torn quilt. Sanatana Goswami. Like that. So now we'll get to slide number 23. Put it on the screen. And this comes in paragraph 19 in your purport, but you don't need to look at the purport, but just look at this in a way that I've put it for you in a summarized form. Srila Prabhupada gives an example of a $100 bill. And it's lying on the ground. So someone who is a non-devotee or a karmi in that sense, he will immediately look around and nobody is seeing. He'll take that $100 bill and he'll put it in his pocket and he'll use it for his own sense gratification. He is considered a thief. And then you get another type of non-devotee who's like an impersonalist or a jnani, Mayavadi. He will look at that $100 bill on the ground and he will say, well, that is Maya, that is materialistic. And he will let it remain there. He will not steal it, but it's not aware of its proper use. that everything belongs to Krishna. But the bhakta or the devotee, he will pick it up and he will use it in the service of the owner, because all wealth belongs to Krishna. He is both honest and wise. So therefore you get the materialist and you get the impersonalist and you get the devotee. It's such a nice Prabhupada analogy within paragraph, within paragraph 19. So let's get to the next slide, which is slide number 24. Beautiful from the purport and the translation itself from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, chapter 19, text 24. How to be satisfied and to be happy. In other words, plain living and high thinking. In the translation, actual verse, one should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny, for discontent can never bring happiness. A person who is not self-controlled will not be happy even with possessing the three worlds. And the partial words from the purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to Brahmanical culture, one should be content with whatever he obtains without special endeavor. That means over-endeavoring, without special endeavor, and should cultivate spiritual consciousness. Then he will be happy. And the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement is to spread this understanding. So we have covered the first item, atyahara, eating more than necessary and collecting more funds than required. You can put me back onto the screen. If you have any questions on this first item, atyahara, you can ask now, or any comments.
Devaki Nandana Prabhu has a question.
Okay, Devaki Nandan Prabhu, please come onto the screen.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
You have to unmute yourself. Unmute.
You can speak, Prabhu. You're unmuted.
Yeah.
Speak,
Hare
and you'll
Krishna
come onto
Maharaj.
this. Speak, but you have to come.
Maharaj,
Is it? Yes, Devaki Nandan, tell me. You can stay still and come. Look at the screen, Devaki Nandan, and see if you're there. Right, you're there now. So ask me your question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj,
Hare
is
Krishna.
Atyahara even on prasadam?
That we'll discuss later. That we'll discuss in exchange with devotees. And I mentioned that yesterday also. I mentioned it yesterday that under-eating and under-eating for an old person is a good mistake. Overeating for a young person is also a good mistake. So that's a little different about prasadam. In other words, you can stuff yourself up so much that you can eat your way back to Godhead. Imagine that you ate so much that you are suffocating and you leave your body and you'll remember prasad. And you'll probably land up in Mother Yasoda's kitchen or Radharani's kitchen in Goloka Vrindavan. And you're waiting for Krishna's remnants after eons. So prasadam is a little different from the prasadam is within Antaranga Shakti, is within the aspects of Krishna consciousness. See? Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, we quoted yesterday. Srila Prabhupada said, they eat to die. And I answered, not to die again. That means no more birth, old age, disease, and death. So if you hear the talk from yesterday, which you may not have done, right, Devaki Nandan?
Yes, Maharaj.
Where we discussed text number, 2 days ago. We discussed, this is our third day. So if you go on to the YouTube link, you'll get, the part 1 and part 2, then that'll also answer your question further. Okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else for now? Hare Krishna.
Prananath Prabhu has a question. Prabhu, you can
come onto the screen, Prananath.
Yes. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Tell me your question.
बोलना पड़ेगा. हाँ, actually Maharaj. Is there a voice?
Ask your question quickly.
Actually, in Mumbai, like we have some sessions by devotees. They are giving financial planning for devotees. So should we plan a future, like saving so much for the future, for retirement? Should we be anxious about all these things?
Okay, I have your question. You can switch off now. Unmute yourself, mute yourself, then put me back onto the screen. Put me back onto the screen, Krishna Prema. All right. So I'll repeat the question from Prananath Prabhu. He said that in Mumbai, devotees are doing financial planning. You know, how to sustain ourselves for the future in cases of emergencies and so forth. You know, we have to be very practical here. In other words, the current life that one is living rather, even connected to Krishna consciousness, is that, you know, we are going with the flow of artificial economy. Artificial economy means that, you know, even as a sannyasi, I have to depend on artificial economy. But at the same time, I know for a fact that I don't need this artificial economy, even as a sannyasi. So in my later stages in my life, you know, I may just go to Vrindavan or Mayapur and pass my time, my last few years. I'm not dependent on it. See? So we should also feel the same way, that we can go with the flow of the artificial economy, but gradually do not depend more and more on it, and turn the tide to our genuine economy, which is Krishna, Balaram, the land, and the cows. Even if as a householder, you know, if you're living in one small apartment in Mumbai, it is actually, you know, it is actually hell. You can't even breathe fresh air. See? And obviously, many of our devotees who are living in the cities, they may have come originally from their father's or grandfather's time from some village, and they have land there. They have land there. So go back to that. Or maybe, you know, work in the city with this artificial economy, make the money and buy more land. But gradually over the years, you know, maybe you may not be able to do it in your lifetime for yourselves, but prepare that for your children and grandchildren. So gradually over the years, one should move away from this artificial economy and come back to genuine economy, that is substance, which is the land and the cows. So slowly one should turn the tide. It may take sometimes for some persons even a few lifetimes, who knows, but at least, you know, work in that direction. Work in that direction. And Prabhupada emphasized this as the second part of his instructions, you know, which is called Daivi Varnashram. You know, live with the land and the cows, Krishna and Balaram, together with the devotees. You know, I'm right here in Mauritius during the lockdown. And I'm already here several months. And I may be here even for several more months because no planes are leaving the country yet. And, you know, I am breathing fresh air. I get fresh Karela every day, you know, bitter melon. Every day, fresh from the garden. And I'm living at a temple, in the temple, near the temple called Krishna Balaram Mandir. And we have beautiful Krishna Balaram deities here. And everything is coming from the land. And even the devotees are living nicely. In another temple here, called Sri Sri Radha Golokananda. So one devotee family, they have 2 teenage boys. He works for the government and she works for the university. But because of the lockdown, they could not go into the office. But because they live near the temple and the other devotees who live far away, they could not travel because of the lockdown. They wake up 3 o'clock morning every day. And because they're near the temple, they go and wake up the deities and do the morning offerings and do the Mangalati and so forth. But they wasn't doing that before. And then the devotee, he told me, he said that I wish I can do this all the time and not go back to office. And he said, I'm thinking of retiring early now, and I have enough money to subsist. Just going and worshiping the deities in the morning. He said he never had this experience before. And he's thanking COVID-19 for it. Like that. So, we can come much closer as devotees if we have a community of devotees in a farm community, agriculture and cows. And your children, they walk this way, they'll see cows. They walk that way, they'll see agriculture. They walk this way, they walk into a devotee's home, and they'll only get prasadam. Whereas in Mumbai, you put your head this way, you see one billboard. You put your head that way, you see traffic. You put your head in this way, you'll see one new shopping center coming up and they're saying official opening sale. It all brings stress and distress and depression. See? So therefore, live life fully, healthily, breathing fresh air, fresh vegetables from the garden and so forth. And play with the cows. As much as you can play with the cows. So slowly we should actually move towards that. But now there's an emergency, temples are finding it difficult. Our ISKCON temples are finding it difficult to manage because there's no economy coming in, artificial economy. So it's definitely we have to rethink, how we live. And therefore, in Mumbai, it's so nice, the Juhu temple has Thalasari farm, the Chowpatty temple has the Govardhan Eco Village, they get products from there. It's wonderful. They're following Prabhupada's instructions that you should live on the farm. And why not go and live with them, pay some rent or lease and do something during the weekend and come back to the city on the weekdays when your work is there. Try it. You'll find it's a great difference in one's life. And I'll tell you one thing, that I'm in Mauritius, and in my travels and going to different places and so forth, I used to take a lot of supplements, like natural supplements, vitamins and, like, tablets or capsules for like bone management, because life is getting older. I'm going to be 60 years of age, I'm already 60 years of age. So we're getting older. But I'm staying here for the last 3 months. My supplements ran out. And life is going on, I'm okay. Okay, because just breathing the fresh air and being with the land and, and so forth. It's nice. So it's possible. It's possible. It's possible. So slowly try to do that. Not like immediately change and, give a shock to the kids, hey, now we're going to go and play with cows and live in the farm. Not like that. Slowly, gradually, you give them the experience on the weekends and so forth. And then if the whole family is in it, then it's easier to do. So you have to introduce them to that kind of experience of, living in a place that is free from stress, anxiety, and depression in a natural way. Okay, anybody else? Other questions on Atyahara?
No, Maharaj. No one yet.
All right. So we'll get to slide number 25. Prayasa, that's the next one. So prayasa, what does it mean in the translation on the screen? Over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. And Prabhupada says in paragraph 7 that the atyahara, which means, overeating and endeavoring for more things that one requires. And this over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain, it comes from atyahara, which leads to prayasa. So collecting and eating more than necessary also causes prayasa. That means one has to work harder or unnecessary endeavor. So prayasa is the baby of atyahara. It's born from atyahara. So over endeavor is born from collecting and eating more than necessary. Very nice, very nice. You can put me back onto the screen. So what does over endeavor mean? Very simple. Everyone knows. Over endeavor means to work very hard. Very hard. And sometimes we even do that in ISKCON. Work very hard. See? Although I am not discussing the persons, but I'm discussing some issue or behavior, which is part of the history of ISKCON, actually. So there was one zonal acharya, after ISKCON, after Prabhupada's manifested his, winded up his manifest pastimes with us. And there was a so-called zonal acharya system. So one, a leading devotee who was a zonal acharya, he engaged at that time the main body of devotees in collecting, just to buy and maintain, like huge buildings and projects, especially in Europe. Like that. Now, if we have some attachments, our motivation will not purely be to serve Krishna, but to really have facility for our sense gratification in the name or in the disguise of devotional service. So therefore, we should be careful for over-endeavor because it's another impediment. And that impediment is a sort of duplicitous behavior. And in the beginning, we may be not really distinguishing, okay, let's have these big projects. Let's collect a lot of money. And then after that zonal acharya leaves, then we find it so much difficult to maintain this big buildings that we have built like that. So it becomes not economically or financially viable. See? So therefore, what should we do is that one should try to engage everything in Krishna's service. But if we become too entangled, and we should notice it and check ourselves and become more careful for this over endeavor, even within so-called Krishna-related activities. So therefore, as we make internal spiritual advancement, we will be able to distinguish what is our genuine desire to serve Krishna from the other desires that is mixed with the desires to serve Krishna, which is comfortable for our own sense gratification. Otherwise, we may become duplicitous and we not know it. So therefore, there are two kinds of purposes. Atyahara means that to get money, to get some more facility, which is comfortable for us, even within Krishna-related activities. And because of that, we get involved in so much prayasa or over endeavor. What is the value of having one home here, another home here, one so-called ashram in Vrindavan, another so-called ashram in Mayapur, another so-called ashram in Jagannath Puri, whereas you only live there for a few weeks a year. You might as well just get a rented place and carry on. It's over endeavor. It's over endeavor. Unless you have these places to use it in the service of the devotees. In the service. This goes for everyone, irrespective of which ashram you are in, whether you're brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi. This is just all over endeavor. All over endeavor. So therefore, over endeavor can lead to feeling oneself in one comfort zone in the name of practically in the name of devotional service, but is actually purely unknowingly to us facility for our own sense gratification. So that is also called prayasa. Prayasa. So what's the solution to prayasa? So let's get to slide number 26. Next slide. Solution to avoid this over endeavor from Prabhupada. It's in paragraph 11 in the purport. So true religion, however, instructs people to be satisfied with the bare necessities of life while cultivating Krishna consciousness. Even though we require economic development, true religion allows it only for supplying the bare necessities of material existence. Jivasya tattva jigyasa. The real purpose of life is to inquire about the absolute truth. If our endeavor, prayasa, is not to inquire about the absolute truth, we will simply increase our endeavor to satisfy our artificial needs. A spiritual aspirant should avoid mundane endeavor. Very nicely given by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so that's the second item. First item, atyahara. Second item, prayasa, over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. So we have some minutes, a few minutes. So if you have any questions on this basis, we will take it now. Then I will continue with the other items tomorrow. Anyone?
So far, no one is asking question, Maharaj.
Okay, so I'll conclude with one, with the consciousness of Srila Prabhupada. Consciousness of Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes, one may say that, it's not the facility that we need, it's the consciousness behind the facility that we use. But how sure that we are like that? See? So I'll give you the example of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, before he went to the West, he used to live in the Radha Damodar temple. And if anybody has been there, hopefully all of you devotees have visited. He just had one small room, so small room. And he used to do everything in that room. He used to take rest there. He translated the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in 3 volumes there. See? And then he had this little veranda that he used to walk across and then come onto his kitchen side where he used to cook for himself. And that kitchen had a little window. The kitchen is practically like a size of a triangle, the way it's like kind of placed in that building. And from that kitchen window, Srila Prabhupada used to look out and he used to, get the darshan of Srila Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. I sometimes stay with devotees in their homes, due to maybe poor health and, just to recuperate. And I can tell you, sometimes just the bathroom of a devotee's home is bigger than Prabhupada's quarters in Prabhupada's room in Radha Damodar temple, like that. So Srila Prabhupada, he was, endeavoring to build this beautiful temple for Shri Radha Rasa Bihari in Juhu. And we know, artificially, economically speaking, that temple is worth multi-crores. And, the building itself full of marble and so forth. And Srila Prabhupada, from a material point of view, Srila Prabhupada's quarters on the 5th floor of one of the towers of the guest house is actually the most expensive materials were used in that whole floor. And it is Prabhupada's best quarters in the whole ISKCON world, in the whole world. Those pillars made of, mahogany, wood, and everything there. It's huge. Each floor in the guest house, has about what? 1, 2, maybe about 10 or 12 rooms. And this is the whole floor for Srila Prabhupada. So when Srila Prabhupada, first entered those quarters, and the senior devotees were explaining to Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, I'm talking about in Juhu. When he entered those quarters and they told Srila Prabhupada, so this is the reception, where your personal assistant will sit. And in this inner room, you will meet people when they come. There's an inner room after the reception. And Srila Prabhupada, this is your kitchen on your right side when you enter. And Srila Prabhupada, when you go down the passage on this side, this is where you will write your letters. And then when you enter the main mandap of the whole quarters, on your right side, this is where you will honor your prasada. See? And this is where you'll give darshan in that area. And then when you come on your left side after you move there in the main room, and Srila Prabhupada, this place is where you will translate your books, using the transcriber, recorder, and so forth. And then Srila Prabhupada on this side, this is where you will take rest. Beautifully, done for Srila Prabhupada. See? So after they explained and took Srila Prabhupada on tour of his nice, high-end quarters, most expensive, best in the world that money can buy. Then Srila Prabhupada looked at the leaders who brought him and he said, yes, just like my rooms at Radha Damodar. In my room in one corner in Radha Damodar, I used to take rest. In another corner, I used to translate. In another corner, I used to honor prasadam. In another corner, I had my kitchen. And in the veranda, in that one corner, I used to meet people. So you could see that such a consciousness of a person like Srila Prabhupada, he was not bewildered by material opulence and by facility. He was not bewildered at all. So that's a different type of consciousness, where one can use material opulence and not be attached to it. By Prabhupada saying, just like my rooms at Radha Damodar. Can you imagine? If somebody sees the rooms at Radha Damodar and sees the rooms in Juhu, you'll get, oh, what is this? It's quite different from like an external point of view. But the consciousness behind it was quite different, quite different. So therefore I thought I'll end with that. It is not like over-endeavoring prayasa or atyahara for Srila Prabhupada. That kind of consciousness is very rare. Very, very, very rare. We can only pray to follow in those footsteps. So therefore, better we keep our life simple. Simple living and high thinking. You have one little room somewhere, and you just live your life as a brahmachari or sannyasi, or whatever comes by the mercy of the Lord. That's fine. All right, we'll conclude with this Srila Prabhupada anecdote, just like my rooms at Radha Damodar. So simple living and high thinking. Thank you very much. We look forward to your nice association tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vranda ki, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki, Nectar of Instruction ki, Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.